The entire galaxy went silent when the human stepped forward. Not because he was powerful. Not because he commanded fleets. But because every living soul in that royal hall knew exactly what was supposed to happen next. He was supposed to reject her. Just like the others. The grand balcony overlooked a city of shining towers and drifting starships. Thousands watched from below. Billions watched through interstellar broadcasts. And at the center of it all stood Princess Elira, heir to the most powerful empire ever forged among the stars. Beautiful. Respected. Feared. For 10 years, princes from every major civilization had traveled across the galaxy seeking alliances with her house. For 10 years, every one of them walked away. Some offered excuses. Others offered sympathy. A few didn't even hide their disgust. The whispers followed her everywhere. Cursed. Doomed. Untouchable. Yet tonight was supposed to be different. One final ceremony. One final suitor. One final humiliation. The princess lowered her eyes, already expecting the answer. Then something unexpected happened. The human didn't turn away. Instead, he stepped closer. The crowd stirred. Royal guards shifted their grip on their weapons. And when the human slowly dropped to one knee, shock rippled through the empire like a thunderclap. Because nobody understood why he would do it. Not yet. And what happened next would change the galaxy forever. Why would every prince in the galaxy reject the same woman? That question haunted the stars long before the human ever arrived. Because Princess Elira wasn't just another royal heir. She was the future ruler of the Orion sovereignty, an empire so vast that entire civilizations rose and fell beneath its shadow. Its war fleets darkened planetary skies. Its trade routes connected thousands of worlds. Its banners flew over regions of space no rival dared challenge. Yet the empire's greatest weakness sat upon its throne. Or so everyone believed. Years earlier, deep within the sovereignty's ancient archives, scholars uncovered a prophecy older than the empire itself. According to the surviving records, the man who married Elira would witness the collapse of dynasties and the destruction of kingdoms. At first, few took it seriously. Then the coincidences began. A royal alliance failed days after a marriage proposal. A powerful governor lost his world to rebellion. A military coalition fractured without warning. Each disaster became another piece of evidence. Each rumor became another chain around the princess's future. Soon, fear spread faster than facts. Across the galaxy, rulers started avoiding her name entirely. Princes arrived at the palace seeking power, influence, and access to the empire's wealth. Then they learned about the prophecy. And one by one, they walked away. The rejections became public spectacles. Entire star systems watched them unfold. The humiliation wasn't private. It was broadcast. Every single time. And yet the most remarkable person in the room was always the princess herself. She never lashed out. Never begged. Never demanded loyalty. She simply stood before the galaxy and endured it. Year after year. Rejection after rejection. Meanwhile, far beyond the empire's core worlds, another civilization was quietly earning a reputation of its own. Humanity. Young compared to the ancient alien powers. Unimpressive by galactic standards. No royal bloodlines. No legendary dynasties. No prophecies. Just stubborn determination and a habit of surviving situations that should have destroyed them. Most alien leaders barely paid attention to humans. That would prove to be a mistake. Because among the countless spectators watching the latest ceremony was a human diplomat named Daniel Carter. Unlike the princes before him, Daniel wasn't studying the princess. He was studying the fear surrounding her. And the deeper he looked, the less sense the entire story made. Which raised a dangerous question. What if the prophecy wasn't the truth? What if someone wanted the galaxy to believe it was? And if that was true, who stood to gain? Daniel Carter couldn't stop thinking about one detail. Not the prophecy. Not the rejected proposals. Not even the princess herself. It was the fear. The deeper he looked into the Orion sovereignty, the more he realized something was wrong. Entire star nations feared Princess Elira, Yet almost nobody could explain why beyond repeating the same ancient story. A prophecy. A warning. A curse. Every answer sounded rehearsed. Every explanation felt inherited rather than understood. And that bothered him. Because humans had learned a long time ago that fear could be manufactured. Back on Earth, entire wars had been started by lies people were too afraid to question. Civilizations had nearly destroyed themselves by accepting assumptions as truth. Humanity survived because eventually someone always asked the dangerous question. What if everyone is wrong? Daniel began digging through records buried beneath centuries of bureaucracy. Forgotten archives. Ancient translations. Historical accounts sealed from public access. The deeper he searched, the stranger things became. Key documents were missing. Original texts had been rewritten. Entire sections of historical records simply vanished. Someone had been cleaning the evidence for generations. But why? That question followed him everywhere. Then came the discovery. A single archive hidden beneath the oldest section of the imperial capital. Dust-covered. Ignored. Forgotten. Inside rested fragments of the original prophecy. And when Daniel translated the ancient language himself, his pulse quickened. The prophecy never claimed Lyra would destroy empires. Not once. The actual wording told a completely different story. It spoke of transformation. Change. The ending of old dynasties and the birth of something greater. Suddenly everything made sense. The prophecy wasn't predicting catastrophe. It was predicting evolution. And somewhere in the distant past, someone had deliberately twisted its meaning. But before Daniel could understand who, another mystery emerged. The princess. The more time he spent around Lyra, the more impossible the official narrative became. She wasn't power-hungry. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't cursed. In fact, she was the exact opposite. Daniel watched her spend hours speaking with workers most nobles ignored. He watched her visit injured veterans without media coverage. He watched her quietly support struggling frontier colonies while politicians argued about budgets and influence. None of it made headlines. Most of the galaxy never saw it. But Daniel did. And with every encounter, another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Maybe the prophecy frightened powerful people for a reason. Not because Lyra would destroy their worlds. Because she threatened the systems keeping them in power. Then everything changed. Late one evening, while reviewing archived communications, Daniel uncovered evidence that sent a chill through him. Encrypted messages. Secret meetings. Political factions coordinating behind closed doors. This wasn't ancient history. The manipulation was still happening. Someone was actively protecting the lie. Someone with enormous influence. Someone close enough to the throne to erase records and silence questions. For the first time, Daniel realized he wasn't investigating a mystery. He was walking directly into a trap. And whoever was behind it had just noticed him. Across the capital, security patrols suddenly doubled. Archived files disappeared overnight. Government officials who once cooperated stopped answering questions. The walls were closing in. Yet something unexpected happened. Instead of retreating, Daniel felt the same instinct that had driven humanity for centuries. The instinct to push forward when everyone else stepped back. Because humans had never conquered impossible odds by avoiding danger. They conquered them by facing it. And now, standing at the edge of a conspiracy powerful enough to deceive an entire galaxy, Daniel understood one thing. The truth was far more dangerous than the prophecy. And someone was willing to kill to keep it buried. The first explosion hit less than 24 hours after Daniel uncovered the truth. Not on a battlefield. Not at a military base. Inside the heart of the imperial capital. The blast shook the palace district with enough force to rattle towers hundreds of stories tall. Emergency sirens screamed across the skyline. Civilian transports scattered through the air lanes. And in the middle of the chaos, Daniel immediately understood one thing. This wasn't terrorism. It was a cover-up. Someone had decided the truth was too dangerous to survive. Across the palace, security forces rushed to lock down government sectors. Communication channels began failing one after another. Surveillance networks went dark. The Empire's nervous system was being cut apart in real time. Then Daniel's communicator flashed. Princess Elira. One word. Help. He was already running. By the time Daniel reached the Eastern Royal Wing, smoke filled the corridors. Elite guards were exchanging fire with unidentified attackers wearing military-grade combat armor. Not criminals. Professionals. The kind of soldiers only powerful people could afford. Which raised a terrifying question. Who exactly was giving the orders? Daniel pushed forward through the chaos. An explosion tore apart a nearby hallway. Metal fragments screamed through the air. A guard fell. Another followed. Then Daniel spotted Elira. She was trapped inside a ceremonial chamber as armed assassins breached the final security barrier. For a split second, the entire future of the Empire balanced on a single moment. The attackers raised their weapons. Daniel moved first. The emergency blast doors slammed shut just as energy fire erupted behind them. The chamber shook. Silence followed. Elira stared at him. Not as a princess. Not as a future ruler. As someone who had just realized she was the target of an execution. And that realization changed everything. Because innocent people aren't usually assassinated. Threats are. For years, the galaxy had been told she was dangerous. Now powerful forces were risking civil war to eliminate her. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. Minutes later, hidden inside an emergency command bunker beneath the palace, Daniel finally connected the remaining pieces. The conspiracy wasn't a fringe movement. It wasn't a rogue faction. It reached directly into the highest levels of government. Ancient noble houses. Influential military commanders. Economic dynasties. Families that had controlled the empire for centuries. And they had a motive. The original prophecy had never terrified them because of destruction. It terrified them because of unity. If Elira married and ascended the throne, she would inherit unprecedented legitimacy. Old rivalries would disappear. Political divisions would collapse. Citizens across thousands of worlds would rally behind a leader capable of reshaping the empire. The noble houses would lose power. Their influence would vanish. Their centuries of control would end. So they created a lie. A lie so effective that an entire galaxy accepted it as truth. But now that lie was dying. And they were willing to burn everything down to stop it. Then came the second shock. Orbital defense stations suddenly changed allegiance. Warships appeared over the capital. Entire fleet formations declared emergency authority. The coup had begun. Across every major news network, frightened citizens watched military vessels surround the imperial world. The empire wasn't facing political unrest anymore. It was facing collapse. Inside the command bunker, officers argued. Generals demanded retaliation. Advisors pushed for evacuation. Panic spread. Everyone wanted a military solution. Everyone except Daniel. The human stood before the room's massive tactical display and saw something the others missed. The conspirators weren't stronger. They were simply controlling the story. And humans understood stories. For thousands of years, humanity had survived dictators, tyrants, empires, and corruption. Not by winning every battle. By exposing the truth. Show them, Daniel said. The room fell silent. Show everyone. The original prophecy. The untouched records. The evidence of centuries of manipulation. Everything. The transmission launched across the empire. One world. Then 10. Then 100. Then thousands. Citizens watched from factories. Space stations. Mining colonies. Military barracks. For the first time in generations, they saw the prophecy exactly as it had been written. No alterations. No lies. No fear. Just truth. And the reaction was immediate. Military crews refused illegal commands. Planetary governments withdrew support from the coup. Fleet captains switched sides. Entire formations turned their weapons away from the capital. The conspirators had prepared for war. They weren't prepared for exposure. Then came the moment nobody expected. Princess Elira stepped before a live galactic broadcast. No royal ceremony. No throne. No scripted speech. Just a woman who had spent a decade carrying the weight of other people's fears. Billions watched. Complete silence filled the stars. Elira looked directly into the camera. "I was never your curse," she said. Her voice never wavered. "I was your excuse." The words hit harder than any fleet weapon. She spoke about courage. About truth. About refusing to let fear decide the future. One by one, worlds responded. Support flooded in. Messages arrived from every corner of known space. The Empire was choosing. And for the first time, it wasn't choosing fear. Hours later, the coup collapsed. Ships surrendered. Conspirators were arrested. Ancient dynasties that had manipulated history for centuries crumbled almost overnight. The battle was over. The Empire had survived. The truth had won. But standing beside the princess as dawn broke over the capital, Daniel realized something else. The galaxy still hadn't witnessed the most shocking moment. Because after everything they had survived together, one question remained unanswered. When the dust settled and the future stood waiting before them both, would the humans still choose her? The galaxy expected a celebration. Instead, it witnessed history. 3 days after the failed coup, the Grand Celestial Hall opened its gates once again. The same chamber that had hosted a decade of humiliating rejections now stood filled with leaders from across known space. Thousands attended in person. Billions watched from distant worlds. And every one of them wondered the same thing. What would happen next? The Empire had survived. The conspiracy had fallen. The truth was finally free. Yet one question remained unfinished. The question that had started everything. Would the humans still choose the princess? The enormous hall glowed beneath crystal vaults stretching hundreds of feet overhead. Flags representing thousands of civilizations drifted in the artificial breeze. But unlike previous ceremonies, there was no tension in the crowd. No whispers. No ridicule. No fear. Only anticipation. At the center platform stood Princess Elira. For the first time in years, she looked different. Not because of royal attire. Not because of ceremony. Because the burden was gone. The weight she had carried for a decade had finally been lifted. The galaxy no longer saw a curse. It saw the woman behind the myth. And somehow, that made this moment even harder. Because now the choice would be real. No prophecy. No pressure. No obligation. Only 2 people. And one decision. Then the massive doors opened. Daniel Carter entered the chamber. A simple human. No crown. No royal title. No legendary bloodline. The contrast couldn't have been greater. Around him stood emperors, kings, military rulers, and ancient dynasties whose histories stretched back thousands of years. Daniel had none of that. And yet something remarkable happened. Every eye followed him. Because over the last few days, the galaxy had learned a lesson. Power wasn't always measured by inheritance. Sometimes it was measured by courage. Daniel crossed the chamber slowly. The silence deepened. Even the media drones hovering overhead seemed to pause. When he finally stopped before Elira, neither spoke immediately. For a brief moment, the enormous hall disappeared. There was only the 2 of them. The woman everyone feared. And the human who refused to. Then Daniel smiled. A small smile. A human smile. The kind that carried more meaning than any speech. The audience leaned forward. Waiting. Wondering. And then he began. "I've spent weeks listening to what others said about you." His voice echoed through the chamber. "I heard the warnings." The crowd remained silent. "I heard the rumors." Elira never looked away. "I heard the stories that convinced entire civilizations to fear you." A pause. Then Daniel shook his head. And every one of them was wrong. The words hit the hall like a shockwave. Because they weren't directed at the princess. They were directed at the galaxy itself. For years, everyone had judged her from a distance. Everyone except him. Daniel continued. "The princes who came before me saw a risk." Across the audience, former suitors lowered their eyes. They saw uncertainty. Another pause. They saw a future they couldn't control. The silence became absolute. Then came the line nobody expected. I saw someone worth believing in. For the first time all day, emotion appeared on Elira's face. Not royal composure. Not practiced diplomacy. Something real. Daniel turned toward the gathered leaders. The strongest person in this room isn't the one commanding fleets. His gaze moved across generals and rulers. It isn't the one sitting on a throne. Then he looked back at Elira. It's the person who endured 10 years of humiliation without becoming bitter. The audience erupted into applause. Not because of politics. Because they knew he was right. Yet Daniel wasn't finished. Not even close. The hall slowly grew quiet again. And suddenly every heartbeat seemed louder. Because everyone sensed what was coming. Daniel reached into his jacket. The movement froze the room. Millions watching across the stars held their breath. Elira's eyes widened. Slowly, he revealed a small silver ring. Nothing extravagant. Nothing ceremonial. Just a simple symbol. Human. Honest. Real. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The galaxy stood suspended between 1 second and the next. Then Daniel lowered himself onto one knee. The reaction was immediate. Gasps echoed throughout the chamber. Some leaders stared in disbelief. Others smiled. A few wiped away tears. Because after everything that had happened, nobody expected the moment to feel this personal. Daniel looked up. Not at a princess. Not at an heir. At Elira. Not because of prophecy. The room fell silent again. Not because of destiny. His voice remained steady. Not because the galaxy expects it. Elira's eyes shimmered. Daniel took a breath. Then spoke the words that would echo across history. I choose you. Nothing else. No grand speech. No political statement. Just 4 words. Simple. Human. Unbreakable. For a second, Elira couldn't answer. Years of rejection. Years of loneliness. Years of carrying a burden she never created. All of it crashed into that single moment. And finally, tears escaped. Not tears of sadness. Relief. Hope. Freedom. The entire galaxy watched as the princess smiled. A genuine smile few had ever seen. Then she nodded. Yes. The hall exploded. Thunderous applause shook the structure. Citizens celebrated across countless worlds. Fleet crews cheered aboard starships. Entire cities erupted into celebration. But the greatest impact wasn't the marriage. It was what followed. Former rivals opened negotiations. Trade barriers disappeared. Military tensions eased. Worlds that had spent generations divided began working together. The prophecy had come true after all. Not through destruction. Through transformation. The old order ended. Something better replaced it. Years later, historians would debate the political consequences. Military analysts would study the collapse of the conspiracy. Scholars would write thousands of books. But ordinary people remembered something simpler. They remembered the day fear lost. The day truth won. And the day a human stood before an entire galaxy and made a choice nobody else was brave enough to make. Because every prince had looked at uncertainty and stepped back. One human looked at the same future and stepped forward. And that single decision changed the stars forever. As celebrations spread across the galaxy and a new era began, one truth became impossible to ignore.